Welcome to the Lucky 13 podcast, where we talk about all things people and profit in business. I'm one of your co-hosts, Mike Lantz.
And Joshua Sheffy Hauser. I'm saying it for you. I know you like to say that Sheffy part.
Yeah, I'm over it, but that's okay.
All right, well, I'll bring it back up then.
I'm teasing. Yeah, cool. Well, welcome to the new year.
Man, it's
I know,
right here.
Yeah, it's crazy. I know we've talked a few times here in the new year, but we're well into 24, almost to the end of the first month. It's crazy.
and I know you said we have a lead in today. We're going to work on it, but look, I got to give the shout out. I'm doing this without you knowing, man. We had an amazing annual planning meeting, and it was all made possible by the lifetime learning experience that we got to do at True You. What a great experience. We put guys in cars, rental cars, right?
Yeah,
Nothing parties like a rental. A little worried about that, but all four groups showed up, had a great experience. I want to thank you and the team. What a great experience. Yeah. And for all those out there, if they're not tapping into the True You experience, get your head out of your butt and get over there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And a big shout out also to, you also had Blind Zebra.
Oh, I love the BZ guys.
And Co-Video.
Co-Video, Margaret. Oh my gosh. What a firecracker. You know her dad was my doctor?
Yeah, you told me that.
Fun story.
Yeah. Yeah,
and then we did a little bit of some chaotic stuff. So we'll talk about that in some other episode.
I followed it on social and felt like I was involved actually.
Yeah, and sometimes you can feel like, what is going on over
How about your boss's Prince outfit?
I think he had that in the closet.
I think he nailed it.
Yeah,
it was great.
He did. I want you to. The quote of the meeting was, "Scott will be right out. We're finishing his eye mascara," and I was like, "There it is."
So did he request in advance to be the purple team?
No, found out.
And then put it together.
So Skittles was the theme of that first day. And so they found out they were the purple team, and they royal purpled it up, and they went Prince and the Revolution. So.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
Love it.
Love it. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you again.
We're always happy to do it. Love our partnership.
Yep.
Yeah. So we were joking before we started about New Year's resolutions, right?
Yeah.
Which are crazy things to really think about because, usually most people, I don't know what the statistic is. I could make it up, 90 some percent. They forget about it by February 1. But I'd love to understand, what are a couple of your big goals for the year?
There's always the physical goals that we have, and I'd love to tell you I take those seriously, but you don't get a body like this by taking those seriously. But there is the
we are steps from a CrossFit gym, so we can get you in that.
Yeah, have you ever gone in there?
Yeah, no.
That's not CrossFit. That's CrossFat when I walk in, so we don't do that. There is the one that I always work on, the personal one, and I take those really seriously. And so this year has really been about this. We're going to hopefully get to it a little bit today, but it's all about open and honest and quit holding on and let go, and some intentionality about this open and honest conversation. So I'm really leaning into that this year. I think I've done some good, and the fun part is I know when I'm not. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. How about you?
Yeah. I think my biggest goal, it's written down, it's locked in. I've got some accountability partners on board with it, but it's really the same for personal and professional. I'm a driver by nature. I'm a visionary by nature. I like to resolve things quickly and things like that. And oftentimes it keeps me back from taking a breath, kind of listening, seeking first to understand. Thank you, Stephen Covey. I know I've read the book like 20 times, but still. And so I'm trying to be a little bit better at that at home with my kids, who are all grown. They're all, youngest is a freshman in college, but just being a little bit more supportive of hearing from them and really what they want to have happen, and supporting them in their decisions and that sort of thing. And then also in the business, sometimes I attack a problem without taking a step back and enrolling the opinions of others and things like that. So something I'm trying to work on.
Can I sidebar real quick on that?
Yeah.
We did an exercise because of that. By the way, that ties in perfectly to our open, honest discussion. Sure. We called it the hula hoop exercise. I'm sure you've seen it, where we lined up everybody up, held hands, and we hand them a hula hoop and said, as fast as you can, get it from one end to the other. Everybody's got to go through it. And we watched grown adults bang their head and trip and fall and do a mess of things because we told them they had to do it as fast as they possibly could. Mm-hmm. And that is the driver in us. I got to get it done, get it done. Then we paused everybody and said, okay, it's the Abraham Lincoln, give me 6 hours to cut down a tree. I'll take 3 hours to sharpen my axe. Everybody gets 3 minutes to think about what's the fastest way to get it done. They did it in like a third of the time just by pausing and thinking. So to hear you call that out proves out that why we put adults through some crazy things.
Yeah, and I think it's when I think a CEO's job is to go to the bottlenecks in the business and help people figure it out. But I think it's enrolling alternative opinions, because we all show up with a view of life and a view of our past experiences, and we have to enroll other people into get their viewpoints. Ultimately, the CEO of an organization has to make those decisions. but asking better questions of the team that they've put around them is always a good idea before those decisions are really being made.
Yeah, so. We're in the middle of playoff season. I know most head coaches don't call the offense or the defense.
Yeah.
But at some point in the game, they have to make that decision. They've surrounded themselves with everybody, but on that 4th and 1, there's one person who has to take the input for everybody and has to be the one who stands in front of the microphone and says, we went forward or we punted. And that's what you're talking about right there. So clear.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, you mentioned that you wanted to talk a little bit about open and honest. Yeah. So why don't you tee this topic up? And I have a sense of where you're going, but
we spend a lot of time, especially in the EOS community, and we do that a lot here. I would hope that we're practicing this with our kids in our marriage, but we talk about, I just want you to be open, and we just want you to be honest. And we use those words just in this passive statement, but the intentionality that comes behind it actually is a skill set that you have to work on. I actually believe to be open is a skill and to be honest is a skill. And, people have their characteristics with that, but there's something else behind that. So let me give you my open scenario. So the way I had it hit me in the head, this is how 2x4s work in my world. If for just one freaking second, you stop thinking about what you're going to say next and just listen to what the person's saying. And so there was 2 scenarios that hit me right in the face with that. One is that how many times as you're telling me something to our CEO conversation we just had, I got the answer, I can't wait to tell you. And what we do is I don't let you get all that CO2 out of your face, because sometimes I just need you to let all that air out of the balloon before I put that great idea back in. If I put that idea back in too early, I've just put in oxygen with the CO2, and now my balloon's still not doing what it needs to do. And then the second factor is I actually hear what you said. And so I hope my wife doesn't listen to this, but I'm sure she will. And it's oftentimes, I'm really working on this right now, that she'll say something to me, and what I heard her say and what she said are 2 different things. And because I'm not being open, I'm not actually listening with the intentionality of understanding. I'm listening to either get through or to answer. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I'm really focusing on this year to answer questions with this. What I heard you say is, and I've said that more times in the month of January than I have in my 51 revolutions around the sun this year. And so I really want to hear from you, especially as a CEO, and the conversation we just had. How is openness? How do you? I'm going to say, get rid of the pollution of lack thereof, right, and instill the cleanliness of an open community that is open to receiving information and clarifying what they're getting.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges, and so, like, I know when you go in, and this whole podcast isn't all about EOS, but we both believe in this tool. And one of the things that you always, when you go in there and you establish ground rules, and you do it for every meeting.
Yep.
And, if they don't say it, you're going to put up there as a facilitator, as an implementer, open and honest,
Always
right?
Every time.
But do they really want open and honest?
Yeah.
I mean, let's start there.
Well, and how about this? That is the secret of, to me, the healthiest teams, athletic, marriages, or business teams, is the teams that can be open and be honest. Are they listening with the greater good of the company in mind? Or are they, for just one freaking second or lack thereof, putting themselves first? I'm hearing what you say, so what's it about me, rather than how does this help us? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I see that in rooms on the regular where the listening is about, okay, I got to play my card now. We're all playing from the same deck.
Yeah, I guess what I'd be interested to know is, how do you break through? Like, if you've got, the CEO sitting in the room, because I've seen this before, where a CEO says, I want my employees to be open and honest with me. Do you?
Yeah, that's the question.
I mean, and because are you only want them to be open and honest if they're going to say all good things or mediocre things? But what if they really take it to you, or they have real criticisms about what you've built? How do you get a CEO to accept that?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm going to start on the open side. I think CEOs want the open side. I want you to listen to me openly.
Right.
Right? Can you flip the script? Can you be open and listen to what they're saying? They're not criticizing. They're not bashing. They're not attacking. The reality is they're identifying a problem, or they're venting something to you, and they just want you to hear them, see them, be in that moment with them, be present in their moment, rather than, oh, I've got that answer, we don't need to go any farther. And I know we live in this, we want to be efficient world, but that 10-second pause, right? That what I heard you say is, let me debrief what you just said to me and say it back. Well, this happens again. I'll use my bride. that she'll say something and I tell her what I heard and I wasn't even close. But if I don't ask permission to ask that back, we're not really being open, because open is clarifying. It's the word you just said a second ago. It's being curious and finding that out.
Yeah. And I think that they're in all people. I'm not honing in on any particular positions,
Sure.
and whether it's at home or if it's, with your kids or in the workplace. I do think that there's a breed of people. We all do it, I think, where we get our hair on the back of our neck stands up just a little bit when somebody starts to give you feedback about you, about your company, about your kid, about your educate, whatever it may be. And I think that's something that as people we got to get through and be open and receive, because if we don't receive it, then people will stop giving it. And that's the worst thing. So I had a leader one time who was giving me some feedback, and she started it out by saying, I care about you. And because I care about you, and she actually used the word loved me, I can't not give this to you. And it changed my kind of viewpoint on how I received it. I'm like, yeah, it'd be really easy for her not to give me this feedback. Her day would be better.
Yeah, that's likely conflict avoided.
And she probably maybe lost some sleep about it and was like, well, how's Mike going to react and all that kind of stuff. But she cared enough about me to give me that feedback. And that was a game changer for me in my mind, was like, okay, this is probably harder for this person to actually have the courage to come to me with this feedback than it would be for her not to.
Yeah, we've heard 1,000 times, right? Feedback is a gift. And I think as the recipient, we have to realize that it's not a sword. It is a present. And so, of course, we know the quotes, be present with the present. And so when that feedback happens, I love that she said, Patrick Lencioni, of course, his 5 dysfunctions of a team. I heard somebody describe, you cherish trust, right? You love people enough to have conflict. If you go through the series, you got trust, conflict, that you honor commitments, that you actually respect somebody enough to hold them accountable. And it always sounds like it's the reverse, but it's the opposite, that I cherish our trust and I love you enough to know I got to give you this feedback. I got to have this conflict. Yeah. And then as a recipient, can we just for 1 second, once it's done, before we say anything, say, first of all, thank you. Second of all, what I heard you say is, and then third, what are we going to do with it? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think about you walking in the rooms with people on a quarterly basis, and it's easy to write it up on the board and say, let's be open and honest. But if a business leader's just showing up every quarter, willing to accept open and honest and seek that feedback, that's a problem too.
Yes.
Like how do you recommend that leaders of organizations seek that feedback on a continual basis?
Yeah, we just got done with annual planning season. I had this conversation. If this is the only time we're having this conversation, then our annual planning process is broke. Mm-hmm. And so it should be, I believe when you see it, say it, right? But it's how you deliver it, when you deliver it, the timing of. To hold on to it makes no sense. Why would I carry that anchor around of there's something between us that I just need to be open and honest with you? And then on that honest side, when I do approach it, get rid of the kind of, sort of, sometimes think, believes, feels. I really believe when I go into those rooms or any relationships, let's just get to the know state. K-N-O-W or N-O. This is what I know, facts and figures. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so when I'm being honest, I want to go to that feeling. I don't mind telling you how I feel about it, but it's based off of these facts or these figures. I need you to be open with me. And so it's asking that permission. Is it okay for me to be honest with you? I'm not going to be brutal. I have to be honest, because I want you to be open to this feedback. And then just the words that we use, powerful words drive powerful actions. Why can't we use those words in those conversations to pull out what open and honesty could mean? And it also will start to set our barriers, because there's honesty and then there's brutal honesty, right? And brutal honesty probably should be done in private, if that makes sense.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I've spent most of my career in the HR world, and I've done thousands of exit interviews and thousands of what we call stay interviews. And if I really think back, I don't have a chart to show you, but for sure, the number one reason that you hear people that leave an organization or why they're not happy with the organization is they don't feel like they're heard. They've got ideas. They're not even saying, I want my ideas to be implemented. They're just saying, I want my ideas to be heard. And I don't feel like there's anybody around here that's open to hearing what I have to say. And so I don't have a voice. And when somebody doesn't have a voice in a situation, just a voice, not the voice that wins, but just a voice, then they just feel that their utility, they're not meaningful to that organization.
So, and I know we always move to actions from here, so I'm actually going to take the lead on that, because as actions as leaders, the most powerful person in the room is the one who's vulnerable. And so if you want to be powerful in that room as a leader, to quiet that concern that I'm not being heard, you have to ask for it and then actually receive it. I think we're dancing around that, but when we walk into that room, I need to be vulnerable as a leader and say, hey, Mike, I'm really open to what you have, what your feelings are on this, or I'm open to hearing what you're thinking right now, or something's off between us. I'm open to finding out what's going on. And at the same token, Mike, I want to give you some honest feedback. Are you open for that right now?
Yeah.
Do me a favor, let me get through so that you hear everything, and then I want to hear what you heard me say, so that then you and I can get on the same page. Because the reality is, we're actually tighter than what we think, but we're letting this gap of just not pure open and pure honesty. We're going through the motions of it, but not working on the skills of it, because then we can go shoulder to shoulder and attack our problems rather than look at us as you and I are the problem.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. One of the things that I don't think you were saying this, but I think the way it came out, maybe.
Oh, you heard what I said. I love it.
So one of the things I thought I heard you say, like, I would recommend that those conversations happen sometimes in two different conversations. So, and maybe it was just the way you stacked the comment, but like I've done this before where I've come and I'm saying, I'm gonna let you punch me in the face.
Let's play tennis.
Only so I feel better when I punch you in the face.
Let's play some ping pong.
So I think we as leaders sometimes get caught up in, I'm gonna come to you and say, hey, I feel like there's some riff here. What say you?
Oh, what a great
only so that I can then feel better about coming back and telling you what I really showed up to have the conversation about.
That's so.
Does
good.
that make sense?
Oh yeah. Let me
and I don't think you meant to say it that way. I think you were just stacking your comments, but for the listeners,
we just practiced that. You just did an open, honest with me, right?
Yeah.
Josh, let me give you some. This is what I heard you say, and you're exactly right. Look, if I've got feedback to give to you, don't come in and say, okay, soft hit me because I'm about to drill you in the face.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
No, hey, let's get to it. I'm gonna make sure today I got some things I want to share with you, and let's go through that. And then if we don't even say this, say that. If you have something to share with me, don't do that. Just stay on it. It's about you today, or it's about me today, and because the reality is always about us.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. The other thing, and you were sharing a story before we started that triggered this in my head, and I know I've mentioned this on a podcast, but I'll bring it back up. I think it's really important whenever you're needing to be open and honest with somebody, or you want their open and honesty back, which oftentimes could create some conflict, healthy conflict. It's important to go and check in, say, is my conflict with the person or is my conflict with the issue? Because 90% of the time, the conflict is with the issue, but yet we make it about the person.
Oh, absolutely.
And so we used to have this kind of mantra at Defenders when I was there. It's like, if you and I were in a room making a decision or having conflict or whatever, there was a third thing in the room, and that was Mother Defender.
Yeah.
And we always had to put the issue on the table for the good of them. And I know I've been in situations before, I'm like, why am I arguing with this person? Because I actually really like them, but I feel like we're arguing about something that has nothing to do with us. It has to do with this issue, and it shouldn't be an argument.
So I'm not as skilled as you are in doing that, just in transparency. So I do dumb things. So if you and I were in conflict right now, I would actually put our chairs on the same side of the table and write what we're going to talk about on the board, so that you and I are sitting, not looking at each other, that we're actually looking at the board. Because sometimes our eye contact, we pull in all these other factors. And to your point, the problem's the problem. It's not you. Now, maybe how you're handling the problem or what's your view on the problem, so be it. Let's keep the problem centerpiece and then let our creativity and curiosity resolve the problem, not our insecurities and defense mechanisms. So
I love it.
I get nerdy. I just get side by side with them. It's hard to get mad at somebody when you're touching shoulders and sharing M&Ms.
So the HR guy says, let's not hold hands though. And
All right.
Right.
Note to self.
Awesome. So a couple of walkaways. I'll throw out one.
Yeah,
Maybe
please.
you've got one. So I would just encourage business leaders, whether you're CEO, president, whatever your role is have and even if you've got to calendar it, walk through the office, seek the opinions on a regular basis of your employees. How do you think this is going? How do you think that's going? Where can we get better? Where can I get better? And you're not going to get truth the first time you ask it.
No.
But when it becomes a regular part of what you do, they start to realize that you truly want the feedback. And so that was something I had to realize is I can't just ask once a quarter on an engagement survey. I have to go shoulder to shoulder with somebody and earn their trust first, and then ask them how I can get better as a leader, or what could we be doing differently as a business. And over time, you get people to be more open and honest with you.
I agree. And letting them know there's not consequences for being that truthful. Yeah. The consequence is that I won't change if you don't tell me, right? I won't grow if you don't tell me.
Yeah.
My takeaway, and I'm going to give a shameless plug, good friend of mine, EOS implementer, you probably know him, Kim Bogard.
Yeah.
Just No Honesty is his group. Just launched a assessment that you can do on open honesty. And it was amazing to take this assessment. We can all cheat assessments, but when you take it purely, it really opened up that I'm being more honest than I ever have, and I'm listening less than I ever have. And so it just clearly made my 2024 about that. And then anytime you get a chance to actually study what open honesty means, don't just read the word. Don't assume you know. Put the grind work in to know what open and honest means. And there are skills that you can develop that maybe you don't have today that you can find and actually implement. And it becomes contagious in your team. When everybody sees you leading, you'll find other people want to do the same.
Yeah, great. And the last one that I'll throw in, and I'm gonna challenge all the because everybody that listens to us, other than our 13 kids, they're all CEOs and not really,
my 13 kids are CEOs. They're CEOs. Trust
of course.
us. They cut our checkbooks.
That's right. But I'm gonna just challenge everybody to do a quick inventory. Just ask yourself this question: if I went to any of my employees and they respectfully told me the worst thing I could ever imagine, how am I going to respond to that? And I know I know that I struggle with that.
Yeah.
And so I know that my heart rate would start to raise. I'd start to get a little bit defensive. And so understand that we all have pride of ownership of a lot of the things that we've put into place in our businesses and a lot of things that we've done. And that's our viewpoint. And there's lots of other viewpoints as well. And we can learn from that. But just getting clear on how I typically respond to that kind of feedback and start to make those personal adjustments. Because if we're going to just go into it in a defensive framework anyway, you might as well not even ask.
Yeah, you're just going to defend and pretend.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and so we can all get better.
Can you imagine if everyone who listened to that went and did that, and the first thing that entered their mind, subconscious, was thank you? Now we're being open and honest.
Yeah, for sure. All right, good stuff.